Welcome to the Craft Beer Podcast. I'm Steven Shomler, your host. Today, I'm really excited. We're going to meet with Darin Haener. Not unlike me, he has had a dual career in his journey. The two different things he's done fuel and inform what he does now. As many of my regular listeners know, I love brewers and breweries. I want to help them succeed and do better. And I think I've come across something that might actually help you do it. So Darin, you are the founder of FermentAble, am I right?
Yes, that's correct, Steven.
And it's a software that makes brewers' lives easier. Do I have that about right?
Yeah, that's 100% accurate.
Now, if someone's like, okay, I don't want to hear the guy's story, I just want to know about the software, right off the bat, I like it when people just cut to the chase. You can go to getfermentable.com. That's Darin's website, kind of explains everything he does. But now let's unpack your story, because like I said, you have a dual career. So you've been professionally both a brewer and a software engineer, which I think makes you the perfect person to create software that's going to help brewers.
Yeah, I mean, I can't argue with that assumption.
All right, so questions to ask on all my podcasts. Where were you born?
I was born in Fresno, California.
And where'd you go to high school?
I went to high school at Edison High School, home of the Tigers.
Home of the Tigers, awesome. Okay, and that's in Fresno?
That's correct.
So, Darin, where did your beer journey actually begin? Like, when did you remember any stories when you first encountered beer?
Yeah, so, I am told, I do not remember explicitly, but I'm told that when I was around 3 or 4 years old, I went to a wedding with my parents, and I was given small amounts of beer by multiple people until I got drunk and threw up as a toddler.
Oh my goodness. Okay, but that didn't turn you off of beer. A lot of brewers, and I don't know what this says about brewers, right, wrong, or different, they often had encounters with beer in high school. Do you have any of those?
Oh, of course. I mean, who doesn't? I distinctly remember going to a party, and one of my first encounters with drinking more than just like a sip or two of beer was this party, and we were drinking out of a beer bong, and it was a combination. It was basically anything we could get our hands on, right? It was Bud Light, Coors, Zima, and it was just a disaster.
I bet you had one nasty hangover.
Oh, man. I don't remember having a worse hangover to this day.
Yeah, I Bud Light's bad enough, but when you put Zima in a beer bong, you were a braver high school student than me. So where did at some point, you were liberated from those kind of tragic things and you stepped into the craft beer world. Do you remember where your craft journey began?
Yeah, absolutely. I remember I was working at a pizza restaurant called Popolo's Pizza when I was about 17 years old. And during closing time, when we were cleaning up, our supervisors who were these cool guys who were in college would pour us craft beers from the bar, and we'd sneak them and hide them while we were closing down the restaurant.
And what kind of beer was it?
Yeah, so it was from, at that time we had in Fresno, we had one craft brewery, and so it was Butterfield's Bridal Veil Ale. It was a pretty hefty amber ale, and it was difficult to drink coming from the macro world. You just suck it up so you look cool, right?
You adapted. You were roughly 20 when you started homebrewing. Talk to me about how that unfolded.
Yeah, so I was working in the restaurant industry and ended up breaking my arm and going on disability, and I had nothing to do. And there was a liquor store near my house that also doubled as like a home brew shop. They just sold malt extracts, but I thought it looked interesting. I needed something to pass the time because I was just sitting at home doing nothing. And so I decided to take a chance and like maybe I can buy some of this stuff. And sure enough, as a 20-year-old, they ended up selling me home brewing ingredients, and I was hooked from day one. It was a pretty decent beer, but the rest is history. I just loved brewing beer from the first time I did it.
Awesome. And then, so some brewers, they brew their first beer and it's really bad. Some brewers, they brew their first beer and it's really good. Yours turned out okay then.
Yeah, it turned out okay. I was pretty diligent, did a lot of research and made sure that I was very clean. But unfortunately, I was also very impatient. So I ended up drinking most of it before I even got it into a bottle.
And how big was this batch?
It was a 5-gallon batch.
5-gallon batch. And you probably got, 2 bottles out of it?
Oh, well, maybe 10.
But you loved it. That was your first experience of sampling off the Zwickel, to use a metaphor.
Yeah, absolutely it was. And I was hooked.
Here in the Northwest, in Portland, in Oregon, actually, all of Oregon, we have this incredible event around Valentine's Day every year, Zwickel Mania. And in the old days, you get to go to a brewery and you got a little sample pour, 2-ounce pour right off the Zwickel. It's too big now. You just get sample 2-ounce pours from the brewery itself. But I remember the first time a guy's like, "Oh, do you want to taste beer off the Zwickel?" And I had no idea what he was talking about.
That sounds like a really good time.
Oh man, people will drive to like 6 or 7 breweries to get a 2-ounce taste of beer at every brewery, and they usually buy a beer just to have the experience. But it's kind of fun. You sometimes get to go back in the brewery, and breweries make it fun. It's a big deal here in Oregon. It's a lot of fun. Zwickel Mania is a lot of fun. The Oregon Brewers Guild puts it on. I cannot say enough about the Oregon Brewers Guild. They're amazing. By the way, speaking of geography, so you spent some time in Fresno, you spent some time in Ventura, you spent time in Fresno. Now you're back and you're living in Ventura, which is kind of fascinating to me. Because my grandma grew up in Oxnard. Lived in Oxnard when I was growing up, and I would often visit her. And I think my grandma probably took me to the same beach you take your family to now. What's that beach that you guys go to?
Yeah, we frequent the Pierpont Beach, right down the street from us. Yeah,
that's just so awesome. It's such a small world. It's just crazy.
Yeah, it's wild.
About how long after you had homebrewing? You're homebrewing at 20. How long after homebrew did you move into to becoming a professional full-time brewer?
Almost exactly a year.
You got right after it.
Yeah, I don't mess around.
So you love brewing enough to do it. So how did you end up becoming a brewer? There's always some fun story there.
So as I said before, I was on disability, and I was just I brewed that first batch, and then I just kept going back and brewing batch after batch. And when I came off of disability, I had to find a job in a restaurant, and I thought to myself, well, we have this brew pub in town, and they have a restaurant. Let's go see if they're hiring. And, sure enough, they were hiring, and they offered me a job as a prep cook. And I thought, wow, that's perfect. Prep cooks work in the morning. They work at the same time as the brewer. I'm going to get a lot of exposure and a lot of chances to talk to this guy. And so that's what I did. I worked as a prep cook, and, for about a year, I brought him bottles of my homebrew, and I just bothered him and asked him questions and probably annoyed the heck out of him. But he ended up giving me a job. And
is this the same Butterfield's Brewing that you had your first craft beer at?
That's right. Yeah,
first craft beer from. You're at Popolo's, maybe I'm saying it wrong, but a pizza place in Fresno at 17. You get your first craft beer, and then a few years later, you're working. That's your first full-time brewing job. That's pretty amazing.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, and you're also, I don't know whether this is good news or bad news. Given in my world, it's bad news, but I'll try not to hold it against you. You were a professional brewer for 10 years, and then you were also a software engineer full-time for about 7 years now so far. And, computers, I struggle with them. I struggle with technology. My son Zach will tell you me learning how to edit video is a long division, putting in contacts and editing video. Three hardest things I've had to learn in my life. Being a software engineer, where did that begin?
Well, it really began when I was about 12 years old. My love of software started way back then when I was in 6th grade. My dad brought home an IBM PS2, and I just fell in love with it. It was just a fun thing to tinker with, and I started programming and writing programs in BASIC, and I couldn't get enough.
And how you were 12 years old and you're writing programs in BASIC?
That's right, yeah.
And for our younger listeners, the IBM PS2 has nothing to do with the PS3.
Or 4 or 5.
That's a whole different beast. Okay, so you're writing software now. I think I'm a little older than you, a little bit different games, play. But some kids I grew up with loved computers, and then they had games at home. They had either an Atari or a Nintendo or something. And some people even, because I'm old, may not remember Intellivision. Did you have any games at home like that?
You know what? I did have an Intellivision, actually, now that you bring that up. I had an Intellivision before I had a Nintendo, and I felt like that I was the only person who ever had an Intellivision, to be honest.
I loved playing baseball in Intellivision. I have no idea why, but I did.
I loved the football game. That was my favorite.
And what'd you play in your Nintendo system?
Oh, Nintendo. I mean, Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, Contra, all the classics, right?
And so now you've been a professional, full-time software engineer for about 7 years. So from a creative perspective, I'm a creative, and some people don't think of certain jobs having a creative element, but I guarantee you, software engineering must. I'm convinced it does. What really speaks to you about software engineering from a creative perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I really, from my perspective, liken it to an artist who I look at myself as an artist in the software realm. So, an artist whose medium is paint comes up with an idea in their head, and then they make it a reality on a canvas. But, you can do the same thing digitally. For me, this is my art form. It's a medium in which I can think of an idea in my head and then make it real.
So 2014, you started working on FermentAble, kind of creating it. 2015, you launched the beta version and had 8 breweries you were working with. 2016, you went live. And so now we're 2021, so you've got 4.5 years coming up on that you've been doing FermentAble. There's a lot of really good software and systems and tools like FermentAble for brewers. My son, Zach, he has the host of Strong Opinion Sports. So proud of him. He has, as of today, 162,000 subscribers to his YouTube channel. He has a YouTube channel and a podcast, and behind the scenes, I get to help him as his agent. And recently, one of his advertisers makes this really amazing software. I won't say who they are, but for big business. And I had to have an orientation meeting to help him with the ad copy. And they're like, we don't want anyone to call that doesn't have $1 million in annual volume, and we prefer the CEO call us. And it was really fascinating to kind of hear where their gyros, as my friend Jerry Holt used to say, their gyros are set. They want big business for that particular software, and that's not a craft beering software. That's just something that he did advertising for. But for your business, for FermentAble, what's the sweet spot? What size brewery is your stuff really well suited for?
We're perfect for anyone producing under 10,000 barrels a year.
Nice. Okay, so 10,000 barrels or less. That's a good one for you guys.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I feel like we're the exact opposite of this software that you just described.
I suspect you are. Your website does a really good job of what I like about it, kind of in simple terms, because I don't speak computerese, and some computer people forget that. You kind of laid out real simple. One of the things that I'm really impressed by is the tax reporting component.
Oh, yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. I mean, that was, when I set out to build FermentAble, I was really scratching my own itch. Towards the end of my brewing career, I was managing several breweries, and I really spent most of my time gathering brew log data and deciphering people's handwriting and filling out tax forms. And so when I set out to build this, there were very distinct problems that I wanted to solve that would have helped me back in 2007 to actually be brewing beer again and not sitting there pouring through paperwork for several hours every day.
And I suspect you probably make it easier with those stupid TTB reports.
That's the one. That is the one. The exact one. That report is, it doesn't look that complicated. But when you start digging into it and trying to compile all the data, oh my gosh, even for a small brewery, it probably takes a half a day. If we can save you 4 hours of work time, it's already paid for itself.
Yeah, that makes sense. And just to simplify a brewer's life, I was just talking to a friend of mine earlier today. He does a really good job serving brewers with their strategy. Sam Holloway, Crafting a Strategy. He's great. And I was talking about his business, and part of what he does is he helps brewers make their lives better. And if I can cut out a bunch of time on taxes with FermentAble, that sounds like you're doing the same thing, making brewers' lives better.
Oh God, big time. That's exactly why we are here.
Okay, and then another one was scheduling and managing your inventory.
Yeah, so another thing that I noticed in my experiences and in just knowing lots of other brewers in the industry was this whiteboard scheduling thing, right? It's just nice to have a visual representation of what your fermentation and what your tanks are going to look like for the next month. But what if you decide to move your IPA from fermenter 2 to fermenter 4 and move it back a week? Well, I mean, then you're erasing half your whiteboard, and you got to go back in with your Sharpie or your Expo marker and redo all this stuff. And God, that's so complicated for just moving something around, right? So I wanted to solve that problem in a way that made it really easy, and we did that. The schedule is drag and drop and nice and easy. And then the bonus to that is if you're diligent and scheduling a month or 2 or 3 months out in advance, we have a raw material forecasting report with which you can go in and you can say, look, I want to know for the next month based on my schedule, what are my raw material needs going to be? And you can click a button and you can instantly have a report that shows you exactly what you need to order, and you're done.
That's amazing. And I think a lot of the reason some breweries don't do scheduling 2, 3, 4 months out is because they don't have enough walls for all those whiteboards.
Well, yeah. Who has a 16-foot long whiteboard, right?
And I just have a terrible COVID era confession to make, and I'm just thinking of the people that are going to transition from whiteboards over to doing their scheduling, in your computer system and not have to use the Expo pen. Is some of the disinfectants I wipe my hands with, I kind of like the smell a little. It just kind of in a sick, dark way. And that Expo pens, when I had a time in my journey where I used a lot of those, and there's something kind of I don't know, alluring about an Expo pen. So people that switch, they could still keep the Expo pens in their desk and just smell them when they log into the computer.
Oh, of course. Just like a Tesla owner could just like drive by a gas station and smell those gas fumes.
What's the deal? What do you have against wet paper?
Oh boy, what don't I have against wet paper? I mean, the ink smudges. And not just wet paper, but how about people's handwriting? I mean, if you're trying to get a volume from a brew log and a 8 looks like a 9 or a 6 or a 7, you have to track that person down, and you have to figure out exactly what this number is, because if you don't report things right and the TTB comes a calling, man, you're gonna be in a world of hurt. They're gonna, they don't mess around.
And so with your system, if I understand correctly, someone they take out their tablet or they open up their laptop, and as they're brewing, they are filling it out right along as they go, and you don't have to worry about white paper disintegrating.
That's right. Like, we don't want any paper in your brew house at all. Like, we want this digital. We want to make it as easy as possible for you to get all of your data into the system and easily reportable.
So you can do the brew log, and then you also have a component where people can add and save recipes, because I tell you, one of my favorite breweries, Culmination Brewing here in Portland, Oregon, Tomas is an amazing brewmaster, and he's made some incredible beers one time. One time he made a Forbidden Rice, a black rice beer. It was so smooth and so good, but he just made it up out of his head. He's never going to make it again. He didn't save the recipe. It would have been so nice to have that recipe, and yours has a component where people can save recipes, even if it's a one-off, just in case they win an award and they want to make it again.
That's right. And in fact, you can't brew a beer without a recipe. So you're pretty much guaranteed reproducibility.
So for the people that work with FermentAble, is there any 1 or 2 things they say, this is what really it has helped me and made a difference to me in my brewery and my journey? By
far, the TTB reporting is the number one, because you can generate, as long as you're diligent about getting your data into the system and maintaining it accurately, you can generate your quarterly TTB report literally in seconds. And then we'll generate a PDF for you that is the actual TTB PDF. And all you have to do is print it, sign it, and send it in, and you're done. But beyond that, if you're utilizing the scheduling feature, which you should, because you're not bound by whiteboard space anymore, we have another feature where you can look at everything you have scheduled from today to a date you pick in the future, and you can see exactly what your raw material needs are going to be. And with literally the click of 2 or 3 clicks and just seconds, you can put together an order of exactly what all your raw material needs are going to be for 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, whatever that time frame that you choose is.
I like that. That's nice. Okay, 3 quick things before we wrap up. My favorite beer style, personally, we just finished the holiday season. I love what I call Christmas beers. If it's 12% and bourbon barrel aged, I probably love it. Some people love hoppy IPAs. I meet a lot of brewers who actually love, a good lager or pilsner. What do you have a favorite style?
Yeah, I really, really love IPAs. I fell in love with them within the first 6 months of my professional brewing career, and I just haven't been able to tear myself away.
Fair enough. And if people want to get hold of you, they have questions, you are willing to give out, you got the next two things are pretty cool. You're willing to give your email address to listeners to the Craft Beer Podcast. So it's DARIN, Darin, right? 1 R.
That's correct.
GetFermentable.com. They can shoot you an email.
Yep.
I would encourage them to put in the subject line, I heard the podcast, so they know why you're calling. And really their best bet, I don't like getting emails from idiots personally, but I would encourage people, if you're a listener, this is not Darin's words, these are Steven's words, go to the GetFermentable.com website first and read some stuff so you don't ask him a stupid question that's right there in the front of the website. I get that a lot from people, and Darin's much kinder than I am, but I hate that stuff. But if you got a serious in-depth question and you're missing it, you can email him there. And then you've got something pretty cool that you threw out to the listeners of the Craft Beer Podcast. You're willing to give them 15% off the first 3 months, and people can buy monthly or yearly. If they buy yearly, they get a savings. If they buy monthly and they use the landing page that we're going to give them, they can save 15%. So people can try out for a couple months. If they like it, then they can bony up and get the 1 year discount.
Yeah, that's right, Steven. And it's actually 20% off.
20%. Wow. Okay.
20%. The annual subscription is what gives you an average of 15% off of what would normally be a monthly subscription.
Got it. So people could sign up with 20% discount. They go to getfermentable.com/craft beer podcast, and they can sign up for a couple months, save 20% on each of those months, discover they love it, and then give you the money for the annual subscription, and that saves them 15% off the regular price of monthly.
That's right.
That is nice. I like that. So do you ever get up to the Portland area at all?
Here and there, but it's been rough with travel restrictions right now, obviously.
Well, we'll get all this behind us, and I'm a bit biased. I think we're one of the best beer cities in the world. Of course, I have to admit I am biased, but if you ever get up this way, it'd be great to meet you and meet up with you face to face and have a beer.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic. I mean, I don't argue with you. I think San Diego would give you a run for your money, but Portland is definitely a fantastic one. Top 5 beer communities in the world, in my opinion.
Yeah, and the problem with San Diego really is just there's too much sun and warmth for me. I think if I had that much sunlight, I'd get depressed. I need some rain in my journey, so...
Oh man, I think we're on the opposite ends of the spectrum in that regard.
And warm weather is good IPA weather, but I need a time. I need it to be 40 degrees when I have my 12% bourbon barrel aged porter.
For sure, and maybe that informs my my like for IPAs, because I've spent almost my entire life in California. So.
All right, well, Darin, it was a delight to have you on as the guest on the Craft Beer Podcast. Like I said, I have a heart for brewers. I want them to do well. When I find a resource that might help them in their journey, I want to let them know about it. So thanks so much for coming on, and I wish you all the best.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Steven. It's been a great chat, and I wish you all the best. I love what you're doing with this podcast.
All right, cheers, everyone.